And we had some I mean, they'd go and drink their lunch and come back, but we aren't going to tell those tales.
Not on camera.
Not on camera, at any rate, right.
Anything? We talked about what's kept you here all these years, and I know in your case, Bruce, you are still here.
Still here, still have the same job. I operate under the premise that if you do it long enough, you might eventually get it right. So I'm in my 35th year, I guess, of trying to get it right.
What about the initial dreams for the college, and whether you met them or not, or exceeded them, and in what ways?
I think we've probably exceeded them in many ways. I don't think that initially, when the board and Dale and Virgil and some of us sat around and talked about the future and what might be, I don't think we were anticipating the growth that we've had in numbers, and we certainly did not anticipate the growth in the various programs of study, the various curricula that we offer. We were tuned in more at that time to a few transfer programs and a handful of vocational technical programs. But of course, the college has grown as you meet the needs of people and of society. But, you know, so I suppose it's just like today. I mean, we really can't sit here and talk about, you know, what's going to be 5 years down the road, because we'd be talking about jobs and programs of study that literally do not exist. You know, I mean, there was no way that we were thinking even 5 years ago probably about a program in e-commerce in the business field. So it's been all of that type of thing that, you know, you responded. Other things we tried, and frankly, they didn't work. We put a lot of money into radio, TV, broadcast technology, thinking that that was a field, for example. And there was not enough demand out there in the job market at that time. Other things that, you know, we had a food service program for a number of years that we were going to run, and that we soon saturated the market. There just were not enough jobs for those people to go into. So things ebb and flow by way of what the world wants, what the economy wants, and it's our job to provide it. So that keeps you going as well, because there's always that next challenge out there in terms of how do we respond to that particular need. And of course, back in those days, we weren't thinking anything either, Virgil, about all the customized training that we're now doing for business and industry. That's probably the biggest single change in terms of our instructional programs that have taken place. We were thinking more of the traditional, you know, you're in a program of study and you either get a certificate or an associate degree upon completion, and then you go off to the job or you go off to some other institution of higher education. And we weren't thinking of all the folks that are coming back for the retraining and so forth, or all the customized training that business and industry now wants us to provide. Those things were not on the screen at all. It was more the traditional, and of course all the instructional paradigms that have changed and so dramatically. I mean, you know, you thought about how many students can we put in the class, and do they fit in the seats, and how many can we get in that room to be lectured to by that professor? Well, that of course has changed dramatically as well. So lots of changes, some of them even for the better.
I think one of the interesting things that I recall, Bruce, was you know, when the college first opened, I think there was probably, what, 60 or 70% male?
Yes.
30 or 40% female.
Right.
And the age was very young. I don't know what the average age was, probably 19, maybe 20, something like that. And it wasn't a matter of maybe 3 or 4 years, and all of a sudden, there were more females than males on the campus. The age had crept up. The age had crept up to, I suppose, it's maybe close to 30 now, right, something like that. So that was quite noticeable in the early days of the college, really.
Yeah.
And then the shift too from originally, I think the majority of our students were in our 2-year, what we called our 2-year go-to-work programs.
Right.
And it wasn't too many years until all of a sudden, the majority of students were heading towards the four-year college type program. I've been away now for a while, so I don't know what the situation is now.
It's close to a balance now. We run about, those that are in declared programs, it's about a 45-45 split between the transfer and the vocational technical, with the remaining percentage being either unclassified or undecided students that don't quite know what they're doing. You remember our first commencement?
Yes, I do.
Huh?
Out on the curve.
Yeah.
Governor
Yeah.
Milliken was here.
Yep. We were quite concerned with, is it going to rain on us? Is it going to do what? And the wind and the mics and so on and so forth. We borrowed the, at that time, Western did their commencement exercises out in the stadium, Waldo Stadium. And having come from Western, I had lots of friends there, and we realized that we didn't have, we could rent chairs to put up in the parking lot, but we didn't have any kind of a platform or anything to put people on. So I called a gentleman named George Dahlman that I knew at Western, and I said, George, I'd like to borrow your commencement platform, if that's okay. And of course, you'll have to bring it out to us because we didn't have a truck to haul it or anything like that. So George said, sure, we'll do that. So George and some of the troops delivered it to us, and I remember Virgil and I looked at it, and it was kind of brown and yellow, Western's brown and gold colors. So we said, well, that won't do, so we painted it white. And the governor came, and it didn't rain, and we got through our very first commencement, and George's crew came out to get it and took it back, and the next morning I got a telephone call from George. And George was known for his colorful language, so I can't repeat what he said to me, but it was no different than in his normal conversation. But it was, what did you do to my commencement platform? And I said, George, just think about it now. When you delivered it to us, it wasn't in the best of shape. It needed to be repainted anyway, so just consider this an undercoating. And George said, blankety blank, you're right, hung up the phone, never heard another word about it. So it's good to have friends.
How many students were part of that commencement?
I was afraid someone was going to ask that. Virgil, do you remember?
No, I don't.
I don't either. It was only a handful, I know that, because we only had 1,500 or so to begin with, and so we weren't graduate. But I honestly do not know. I do not remember that. That was a long time ago, and we just finished our 47th commencement, so I cannot go back and give you a number of graduates and number one. I'm sure it's in the archive someplace, but I just do not remember.
Both of you have obviously believed in this place for a long time, the whole time. You still do.
Absolutely.
What is it you believe and why?
Virg, you want that one?
Well, I'm a product of a community college. I graduated from what was then called Muskegon Junior College in 1950. And I recognized that for me, that was the right place to go. Had I tried to enter a four-year college, I'm not sure if I'd have gotten in, first place, and second place, I don't think I'd ever finished because I was so immature and young and had no particular goal in mind, anything like that. So I think the community college really offers an opportunity for students who are like I was 50-some years ago. And I think, too, the fact that the community colleges can adapt so quickly to changes. I think that the emphasis on teaching, I have great respect for the community college faculty. I think they do a really super job because their emphasis is on teaching, not on having to worry about research or writing or anything like that. And the fact that the community college is built around the community itself. You're trying to respond to the needs of the immediate community in terms of programs, courses, etc. So I think it's a great place for young people to start. It's a great place for older people who've been out of school for a long time to come back. and do something that they perhaps wish they'd started to do when they were young, didn't have the opportunity or didn't want to for some reason or another. And I think the community college offers so many things to such a variety of people that this community and any other community that has a community college would be really lost, I think. They'd really suffer a loss if that community college were to not be there. And I think community college is the greatest thing that ever came along in higher education.
I would have to agree. That's what it's all about. I'm also a graduate of what was then called Muskegon Junior College. That's one of the reasons I hired Virgil. I knew he had a good background. I was a few years later than he was. I had been out of high school and I worked and I was in the service and was married before I started college, but I was the same way. I decided when I was in Uncle Sam's Army that I wanted to be a teacher. And I don't know why, I just did. And so I decided I was going to end up at Western Michigan University because they were known as a good education college, and they had a connection with then called Muskegon Junior College, and I was from that part of the world, so I also went to Muskegon JC and realized there the benefits of a smaller, more personalized, because like Virg, Western would not have admitted me right out of high school. No place would have admitted me right out of high school. They would have run the other way, probably, in reality. So I also experienced firsthand what a community college can do. Then when I had the opportunity to work at Western, I worked, as I said earlier, with community and junior colleges, so I saw it across the state and the few in Chicago and so forth. And so I too believed in the basic philosophy of what it's all about. And every day we deal with people that, you know, we're an opportunity for them to change their life. And I would certainly echo what Virg said about the faculty. I mean, because that's where it really happens. I mean, guys like us are supportive, and we help get people into the classroom, and we deal with the supportive structures. But what this place is really all about is what takes place in that lab, what takes place in that classroom, what takes place, the interchange between our faculty and our students. And I like to tell our faculty, and I have used this a few times, that there's a guy named George Will that I'm sure you're familiar with, the political commentator and columnist and so forth. He's a little too conservative for my taste most of the time. But George Will once wrote that a good teacher is like a benevolent contagion. They're an infectious spirit, and whose influence never stops radiating. They infect people, and it just keeps growing. And that's why you know, a good teacher never really dies, because, and I'm sure I know Virg can, we can talk about Doc McKinley, we can talk about some of our Western professors, we can go back to our high school days.
Well, maybe not quite that
Well,
far back.
maybe, okay. But, you know, but there were people who influenced our lives because they were good teachers.
Yeah, I was going to say, when Bruce mentioned Dr. John McKinley, the finest professor I ever had in my entire educational career, and between Bruce and me, we've had a lot of professors.
Got that right.
Dr. John McKinley was by far the most outstanding professor I had. This was at Muskegon Community College that had an enrollment of 350 students when I attended there.
So, you know, they were up to almost 800 when I went there about 7 years later.
Yeah.
5 years later.
And I think that says something for the quality of teaching at community colleges. When somebody has been out of community college for over 50 years and you still remember, at least, well, I remember many of them, but
right.
This fellow was the best. We asked him one time, "What are you doing here? This little dinky community college?" He said, "Sir, I'd rather be a big fish in a small pond
Right.
than a small fish in a big pond." That's the way he put it.
Yep.
He probably said that to you, too.
Yep, many times. Yep. Doc McKinley.
Yeah, great guy.
What do you think were the funnest years in Warren?
The most fun year? Well, I'd probably say the year I retired, but that's not what you want to hear on this
Right.
video, I'm sure. Golly, I don't know.
Well, while you're thinking about it, let me respond. I think
Yeah.
the first 10 or 12, because those were the booming days. We had the world was ready for us. I mean, we gotta remember the 60s were tough times in a lot of ways. A lot of things were happening on a lot of college campuses, not all of them good. We made good things happen on our college campus. And I can remember one time when our students were, they came to me and they said, we want to have a student demonstration. You know, Kent State, I mean, things were happening. Ad building was being occupied at Western. I mean, things were happening in the 60s. And I, wait a minute, what do you mean you guys want to have a demonstration? Well, they wanted to have what they called, remember this, Virgil? A reverse protest. And they wanted to protest in favor of the college and in favor of the faculty and in favor of the administration and get that. And this came from the students. So right on, guys, let's do it. So we set it up, and one of them brought up an old farm truck with a flatbed on it that they could jump up on and so forth. And we didn't let Dale, Dr. Lake, know what was going on. So they drive into the parking lot, and the students begin to accumulate, and it was my job to make sure that Dale was on campus that day. And he looked out of his window and saw all these students gathering and hauled me in and, what's going on? You know, what's going on? I said, gee, I don't know, Dale. Looks to me like they're gathering, and they've got a mic up on that truck, and they're up there, and they're starting to make speeches, and I don't know what's going on. So we better go out and find out. Well, and I'm sure we've got some photos of that in the archive someplace, because they actually put Dale up on their shoulders and paraded him around, and so those were the good days, because we were doing things. Frankly, we had money to spend, and it was just that. So probably the first 10, 15 years when things were really booming, because, you know, if you had an idea, well, let's give it a try, because it was new, and let's see how it would work.
You remember one of the signs that they had? Lake is no fake.
Yeah.
I thought that was cool.
And those were, you know, those were the fun days. And not that, I mean, every day's fun. I've always said when I don't want to get up and come to work, then that's when I'll retire. But it was fun. Even though I knew I had to face this today, I still thought it would be fun to come to work. Partially because I knew we'd see this guy, and I do miss him. We worked together a lot of years. A lot of years.
Certainly did. You smoked a lot of my cigarettes in the early days, Bruce.
Got that right. God, yes.
I drank my wife's coffee.
And drank, yep.
Yeah.
A lot of good times.
Any last things you guys want to say about the whole experience?
Well, personally, I'd just like to say that it was very fortunate for me and my family to come here and to have the opportunity to work with Bruce. We worked together, as he said, many, many years. I found him to be a really super boss. And
I'm not your boss. Joni's your boss.
well, that's
we know
true,
how that
but
works.
But it was a great experience for me to come here, and I consider myself very lucky to have been here.
And again, I'd have to echo that. I think it's, you know, I have no regrets. You know, sometimes you wonder, what if I'd stayed at Western? What, you know, and put 34 more years in there, what might have happened? Or what if I'd taken that job opportunity that I had to go here or there or someplace else? And of course, we all did have a few. But I really have no regrets. I mean, it's been a good institution. I think we've had a very positive impact on this community. We can go virtually anywhere, and there's a former student, there's a current student, there's a former employee, there's someone whose lives we have touched in some way. And it's kind of nice to be able to do that. You know, it's worked well.
I even saw one of my former junior high school students here the other morning.
Well, so you're much older than I am, so
know,
I don't
right.
recognize any of those anymore.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, come on down.
so it's going to be fun. So I may be calling on you.
Yeah.
Be calling on you all the time and saying, help.
Well, you'll have to talk with Joe.
I know.
She's my,
I know.
she interferes with all my
I
plans.
understand.
That's great.
We okay? Good.
You ready, Betty?
Yes.
Maybe, how about if we start how this all started for you, how you initially got involved?
Working here?
Mm-hmm.
Well, this is in 1976, 74 actually. They were looking for an assistant dean of instruction. So I applied for the position. Then I went to California with my husband. He was on sabbatical from the Upjohn Company, and I went to do an internship at Stanford University. Then after that, we came back in '75, and Dr. Schlack, the president, phoned me and said that I got the job. So I then started after the new year. So that's how I got started here.
Okay. Great.
Okay.
And we're rolling?
Yep.
Okay, what were you doing before this?
I was studying for my Doctor of Education degree at Western Michigan University. But at that time, I finished all my coursework and also did my internship, so ready to work. Yeah.
And had you known Marilyn before this? And talk to me about that.
Yes, Marilyn and I were in the same Doctor of Education program. But she graduated several years ahead of me. We have been good friends ever since.
What was exciting about those early years?
Oh, it's a ability to get into a new position, to make some difference in education, and to work with a lot of hard-working people, educators. That was exciting.
And what sorts of things were you able to break ground in? I know you did a lot of new programs here. Can you recall the ones you find special?
In the early years, I didn't start any new program. I just kept things going. And then later, I became more mature, and also I think my faculty members became more mature as well. So we venture into extracurricular activities such as international education and the Artists Forum, and concert series and so forth. And those were new here at the college.
And what was your role in
I was mainly a facilitator because I have a lot of talents in the Division of General Studies. All I had to do is to urge them to come forth to try their wings and new ideas. And I also try to get the resources to facilitate these activities. Yeah.
Well, what was most rewarding about putting those programs together?
I think the most rewarding is to see them materialize and to see how happy the faculty members got when their programs got implemented. And also to see how well they received by the community and the students.
Now I see the honors program and police academy here, which maybe you could talk a little about. And land, what is land?
LAND is a liberal arts network group comprised by the community colleges in Michigan. It was initiated by someone in Lansing Community College, and we joined them. It's an organization to promote liberal arts. And that was very well received by the general studies faculty members.
And the police academy?
The police academy has always been here. It's of course our pride and joy. It's part of our law enforcement program. The academy train policemen within a very short time, very intensive and good training. And it was very well received here in Kalamazoo. So we are very proud of it.
To students coming today who've never been here before, what would you say to them to convince them that this is a worthwhile place to experience those years?
I think I could tell them that not only would they get practical studies here, information and knowledge that they can use right away when they go out to work, and they will also receive the liberal arts education that broaden their thinking and their horizon. So I think KVCC offers a whole person education. I think that's important.
Now you've just come from a reception.
Yes.
Where everybody, I'm sure, was very happy to see you.
Yes.
Which means they think a great deal of you. And that's probably because you think a great deal of them.
Yes.
And the college. What is it about your experience here that you love?
I love? I think it's the family feeling. Everyone knows everyone else and is concerned about what each other is doing and helpful and encouraging of each other. I've worked here about 17 years, and that feeling has always been with me.
Any fun stories about Maryland you can tell us? Maybe this is time when Elizabeth joins us. I don't know. You want to?